The Sheedy Excellence in Teaching Award is the college's highest teaching honor, presented annually to an outstanding teacher in arts and letters. This award recognizes a faculty member who has sustained excellence in research and instruction over a wide range of courses, a professor who motivates and enriches students using innovative and creative teaching methods, and who is influential in how we teach and learn in the College of Arts and Letters. The award was founded in 1970 in honor of Reverend Charles E. Sheedy, C.S.C., who served as Dean of the College of Arts and Letters from 1951 until 1969. Father Sheedy, a professor of theology, became dean at a pivotal time. O'Shaughnessy Hall was just opening, and his close friend and colleague, Father Theodore Hesburgh, was beginning his first year as university president. One of Father Ted's guiding principles was that at the core of a great university should be a great liberal arts college. He entrusted Father Sheedy with that vital mission. In his nearly 2 decades as dean, Father Sheedy maintained and enhanced the role of the College of Arts and Letters at the university. He also published extensively and was a well-known advocate for the abolition of the death penalty and for the cessation of nuclear war. Perhaps his most indelible impact was on the hundreds of students he taught, including one future Sheedy Award winner, economist William Leahy, who paid tribute to his former professor and longtime mentor in his 2004 acceptance speech, saying, "He was a great teacher, stimulating, challenging, and witty, always leading his students to seek the truth." This year's Sheedy Award winner is someone who also leads his students to seek the truth. Professor Jason Ruiz from the American Studies Department. Jason traveled all the way back from his sabbatical in Columbia the country, not Columbia, South Carolina, and not Columbia University in New York, but Columbia. December in South Bend is not exactly peak weather, so thank you, Jason, for making this work. He is joined here with his husband, Juan, and many family and friends. Our tradition is for the previous year's Sheedy winner to introduce the honoree. Our 2018 Sheedy Award winner, Ernesto Verdeja, is conducting research out of the country and could not be here today. So next we asked Asaka Joshua, the Dean of Undergraduate Studies, to present the award, and she is sick today. So I'm afraid you are stuck with me for a few more moments. Ernesto thankfully sent words of congratulations to Jason, and so I will read those words verbatim. Dear colleagues and friends, I regret that I am not able to join you for today's celebration due to a prior travel commitment. Nevertheless, I'm with you in spirit as you celebrate this important and joyful event for the college and the university. Dean Mastillo kindly asked me to provide some words on this year's recipient of the 2019 Reverend Charles E. Sheedy Award for Excellence in Teaching, Professor Jason Ruiz. I'm delighted to do so. Jason and I started at Notre Dame together, and having heard students rave about him for years now, it's clear that he is undoubtedly an excellent choice for this prestigious award. Jason is an associate professor of American Studies and holds a range of affiliations across the university, including Program in Gender Studies, the Institute for Latino Studies, and the Departments of Africana Studies and Film, Television, and Theater. So I wonder you have time to be such a good instructor with all those affiliations. That part was not verbatim from his. His research interests are firmly rooted in some of the most pressing questions confronting American society today: the fraught nature of race relations, debates over identity, and the framing of what it means to be American, the political and social status of Latinx and other peoples of color, the complexity of gender and sexuality and their political dimensions, and the role of popular culture in political struggles. He is the author of Americans in the Treasure House, Travel to Porfirian Mexico in the Cultural Politics of Empire, multiple articles and chapters, as well as the editor of 4 special issues and 2 books. His expertise has been sought by numerous media outlets, including the New York Times, and his research has received support from a number of sources, including a substantial grant from the Whiting Foundation to support the Latinx Murals of Pilsen, a digital toolkit for discovering, researching, and teaching public art in Chicago. That he has excelled as a researcher is evident from this brief overview. But of course, we're here to celebrate his extraordinary success as a teacher. It's no surprise that Jason is this year's Sheedy Award winner. Students are in awe of the breadth of his knowledge, but also encouraged by his compassion and sensitivity towards the moral issues he engages in his courses. In fact, he was the recipient of the 2016 Edmund P. Joyce Award for Excellence in Undergraduate Teaching as well. His students and colleagues have noted the broad range of creative approaches he brings to teaching, from his mastery of material in the classroom to promoting numerous campus events enriching our intellectual life, such as bringing famed star Rita Moreno to Notre Dame. Indeed, he even organized study breaks called Puppies and Hot Chocolate for his students, which have rightly grown in popularity. Students have called him versatile and gifted in the classroom, while a colleague noted his skills in the full range of teaching settings. As another colleague stated, he is the most skilled discussion leader I have observed in more than 30 years of watching colleagues in the classroom. Jason has done this while maintaining the highest expectations for his students. In one student's words, Jason's courses are intellectually challenging, while other students have simultaneously underscored how he is demanding but compassionate, building a community of scholars. This is all the more striking given the subject matter he covers in the classroom. A common thread running through students' comments is how he consistently shows respect for their diversity of opinions and experiences while encouraging students to step outside of their zones of comfort. One senior colleague captured this perfectly. Notice what he teaches: race, sexuality, gender, and then note that the students find him fair. On a campus that worries about how to improve the climate and become the more inclusive environment we all want, Jason is at work in the trenches, helping students to confront diversity in U.S. culture and demanding that they judiciously assess the complexities of the issues. Many students have noted his ability to include all voices, how he made everyone feel that their insights were not only expected, but warmly encouraged, while still pressing them to examine their own assumptions critically and thoughtfully. Jason's exemplary combination of rigorous teaching with a commitment to tackling the hardest questions of our time is at the heart of fostering a democratic education, one where moral reflection and a concern for others is wedded to intellectual advancement. In his courses, he reminds us that justice begins here at home, in our own communities, and in our own society. Please join me in welcoming Jason to the podium to share some thoughts of his own on teaching.
Wow. Wow. I really want to thank Ernesto, who I miss, and I wish I was standing here with as well, for writing those beautiful, truly humbling words, and to Dean Mastillo for delivering them so beautifully. Thank you so much. I want to sincerely thank the Dean's Office, especially Dean Mastillo, Margaret Meserve, Matt Zinowitz, Asaka Joshua, who I'm sorry is sick, my dear friend Jolene Belinsky, and especially the selection committee for this honor. As you just heard, I am indeed on sabbatical, and my husband Juan and I have set up house in Cali, Colombia, which, believe it or not, is the hot part of Colombia. And it's just really difficult to describe how much this honor means to me. So being a Midwesterner, I think the only thing I can possibly do is make a weather joke and show you exactly what we're giving up to be here today. It might not be in the upper 80s here, unfortunately, but I've been warmed. I'm sorry, I couldn't resist. I've been warmed tremendously by all the love on this special occasion, so thank you. I hope you won't mind if I start by pointing out some special people in the audience, and I'm going to try to make it through this. My parents, who made the trek about 70 miles down the toll road to go to the reception. Well, I'll force them to go to the reception afterward. Please be nice to them if you meet them, especially because yesterday was my father's 70th birthday. When I think about my mom cleaning houses and my dad doing odd jobs to pay for my Catholic education, I hope that a day like today and the ridiculous level of love and attention that I'm getting here on this stage and probably after will convince them that it's all been worth it. I also want to thank my brother and sister-in-law, Tom and Jackie, for taking the day off to be here. Tom and Jackie both happen to be Catholic school principals and are they are truly the two hardest working educators that I know, and they inspire me with their hilarious stories about their students and the hard work that they put into providing very great Catholic education in Northwest Indiana, including in the case of Jackie in our hometown of East Chicago. It means the world to me that they, along with my wonderfully smart and funny nieces, Mariana and Cassie, made the effort to be here with us today. I share this award with the aforementioned Juan, who traveled a lot more than 70 miles to be here and celebrate with us. Juan is a great teacher himself, and he inspires me every day of our life together with the devotion, care, and love that he shows his own students. I will add that he's also shown my students in brunches and trips and stuff like that. Juan also keeps me going on days when teaching is dispiriting, depleting, and depressing. I think we don't actually talk enough in this profession about those days, and I feel extremely lucky to spend my days with someone who can relate to the disappointments and help me remember all of the joy of the bigger picture. I also want to thank some non-arts and letters friends who made the effort to be here, especially my beloved friend Crystal Whitlow and my beloved friend Jennifer Parker. Jennifer is my partner in the digital humanities project that Sarah mentioned a little earlier, devoted to the Latino murals of Pilsen, and was practically my co-teacher last semester in a course I taught devoted to muralism in Chicago. I really want to say thanks for that. And I need to say a special thanks to my colleagues in American Studies and our incredible administrator, Katie Schlotfeld, who does not like the spotlight, but who we always call the heart and soul of our department because she truly is. Some of you might not know much about American Studies. I know we're that weird department still squatting in Flanner Hall. But I'm really proud that we provide a home to some of the most intellectually curious students on this campus, a few of whom I see in the audience. And I'm extraordinarily grateful to work with colleagues who not only keep me on my own toes intellectually, but who approach academia, this super weird profession, with great humanity and know how to have a lot of fun in the process. The Sheedy Award selection process is super secretive, so I have no idea how this happened, but I know that my American Studies colleagues had a lot to do with this, and that to me is another indicator of just how supportive, kind, and loving they've been to me over the years. The same goes to those other departments that I'm affiliated with, so thank you, especially ILS, which has provided a second home for me for 11 years and a lot of great resources. Like many of you, this is not my first time to a Sheedy ceremony. I've been in the audience as we have bestowed this award on several beloved colleagues over the years, and I've been moved to see how beautifully and fully they embrace teaching as a vocation. I doubt, for example, I'll just mention one that I'll never forget. I doubt that anyone who was there will forget when Robert Sedlak received this award a few years ago and all that it represented as he approached the end of his life. I'm also thinking about my very first semester here, sitting in the audience and watching Richard Pierce accept this award, and thinking that this is a place that takes teaching so seriously and rewards faculty who cares. This is all to say that I don't feel quite worthy to be among those giants, but I am deeply moved to be on this side of the podium today and to share some of my own thoughts with you about my life as a teacher. Winning the Sheedy while on sabbatical has had two pleasant side effects. First, I have avoided seeing my face plastered on the infamous Sheedy poster all over campus. Second, it's allowed me to have a little extra time to reflect on what it means to be a teacher, and especially what it means to be a teacher here at Notre Dame. Recently, I asked Associate Dean Margaret Meserve how I should approach this speech. In other words, I did the most Notre Dame thing possible, and I asked her for a prompt. I mentioned that to Dean Massillo last night, and she said, at least I didn't ask for a rubric. It turns out there isn't a prompt, but Margaret gently suggested that at this point in the semester, nobody wants to hear a lecture on how to teach. especially from someone who's away on sabbatical. Keep it personal, Margaret said. That was really good news. And as I will soon explain, it's good news for me because the personal is an essential element of my pedagogy. That wasn't always the case, and I want to spend my time today reflecting a bit on just how bringing myself more fully into the classroom has improved my teaching over the years. I'll start with our senior thesis class, because I've been teaching it off and on over the past 6 or 7 years, and this fall I noticed how the class changed over time. I started teaching the class focusing on things like the Chicago Manual of Style, how to do footnotes, how to cite sources. I still do all of that boring but necessary stuff, but I've come to realize that students need much more than the mechanics of how to write a thesis. When it comes down to it, they simply need to hear and they need to be convinced to believe that they have what it takes inside of them to write a thesis. One text that I've used again and again is Anne Lamott's book, Bird by Bird, which has helped to keep me personally going as a writer since my dissertation days. Lamott is useful for undergrads because she's wickedly funny, but also profound in her message that writing is a scary, wonderful, maddening, rewarding undertaking. When I reread Lamott every fall, there's one thing that always strikes me as relatable to my own teaching career. It's not one of her famous spiky but penetrating theories about the writer's life, but the fact that she's constantly trying to convince herself to lower the stakes and lighten up on herself. When Lamott is unmotivated or feeling totally depressed about the task of getting words on paper, she asks herself the simplest of questions. She just asks herself, why not? That's it, those two simple words that I try to use to keep senior thesis writers going and that I've used on myself a lot throughout the years. I'm worried that this question, why not, sounds trite, but we as researchers sometimes take ourselves so seriously that we simply do not leave the room for the element of surprise. We get so busy worrying about getting it right, fulfilling the prompt, that we forget to have fun, to experiment, to try out new things. I think senior thesis writers do something similar. They imagine that their writing has to be perfect, that it has to resemble what they think a good senior thesis looks like. I challenge them with why not a lot. Why not just check out that archive, see if it has something for you? Why not just pick up the phone, talk to that person who's an expert in your field, and find out what they have to say about your research? Why not start today by writing just one page, and see what happens, see if it can turn into a thesis? One of the weirdest things about this profession is that teaching typically embodies about 40% of our workload, but in grad school, most of us get very little teaching training. We are luckier than most here at Notre Dame because we have the awesome Canib Center to help us in every stage of our career. But because a lot of us never really get trained as teachers, we have to spend our days experimenting, trying new things, and figuring it out along the way. It's that willingness to take risks that I really want to talk about, because when I reflect on my time as a teacher over 11 years, that's really what comes to mind. This might surprise some of you that Notre Dame, this stalwart place where tradition reigns, is the place where I learned to be bolder, to be more experimental, to try out new things, but this university and this college in particular has given me a lot of space and time to ask myself why not over these 11 years. In my first semester of teaching, those golden days of having a course release and no gray in my beard yet, I taught a class called Mixed Race America. I was fresh out of graduate school and arrived on campus with a certain image of what a Notre Dame professor would look like and how they would teach. Looking back, I kind of cringe at how I approached some of the course material. For example, one of the units that I meticulously prepared for this class was on the long-standing historical debates about Thomas Jefferson and Sally Hemings. I really wanted students to leave the course with a sense that sexual, romantic, and familial relations between different racialized populations is not just some recent phenomenon in U.S. history. It's actually fundamental to U.S. history. That in fact, you can't understand Americanness, as Ernesto put it, without stories like that of Jefferson and Hemings. But here's the thing, I held back. We dutifully unpacked Annette Gordon Reed's masterful and definitive history, The Hemmings of Monticello, and it being the fall of 2008, we read and analyzed Barack Obama's memoir and then watched America elect him as the first mixed-race president. We learned a lot, so I'm not saying I was a bad teacher. What I'm saying is that I was not doing what feminist scholar Bell Hooks calls teaching with the whole body in her book, Teaching to Transgress. Hooks argues that a great teacher, cannot simply teach with only her head. She's got to bring her heart and soul and her own story into the classroom as well. I regret now that I never showed the students in that class that my own interest in the subject matter was rooted in my own upbringing in a family whose history was mixed up in terms of race, ethnicity, culture, and language. That could have been an important element of the course, but I guess I wanted to embody what the cool-headed and objective professor that I assumed student wanted. And I'll point out, I think that was a wrong assumption. I operated like that for a few years, in fact, as if I were some dispassionate curator of student readings and a moderator of their conversations. But I slowly began to realize that doing so meant that I was not fully in the classroom. Two things about that particularly bothered me. First, I was underestimating my own expertise and how it connected to my personal story. I had a mission and a message, but I was hiding behind an air of neutrality and objectivity. Second, I realized that I was not following my own advice and taking risks, putting myself out there, and just seeing what might happen if I taught from a place of honesty and transparency about my personal story and my political investments in my academic work. What I've done since then is pretty simple. It hasn't required, sorry, Kevin, this is not a slam on Caleb, I swear, but it hasn't required that I go to any seminars or additional teacher training. I do go to those. I simply started bringing more of myself into the classroom to tell students my own story and how it relates to the subject matter. I think a good example of this would be 2016, when late that year, the president-elect made it clear that he intended to repeal the policy of delayed action for childhood arrivals, or DACA. I wrote an open letter to President Jenkins telling him about my grandfather's undocumented migration to the United States and how it guides my service in Notre Dame's undocumented students. Honestly, it worried me about exposing so much of my family history to the campus and to the public. And I talked it over with my parents, in fact, just as I talked over today's remarks with them. I can take no personal credit for the fact that Father Jenkins and the administration has taken a rather humane approach to undocumented students on this campus and has supported them since that time. But to me, it mattered to show students that faculty have investments in their success that go far beyond our intellectual pursuits. My family's history is a driving force in why I teach and research about U.S. perceptions of Latinos and Latin Americans, so why not admit that our story is an important historical source for me and drives me as a scholar and teacher. I am going to admit here that my vision for teaching with the whole body does not have to revolve around the tragic histories of race, class, gender, and sexuality in the United States. To be fully honest, it's also included things like sneaking my dog Dolly into the main building a few times period in history. Sarah just groaned. When students and I could use some extra love in the classroom. What I'm telling you goes against a lot of the advice that gets out there. When I got this job, my advisor only gave me one piece of advice. He said, try not to be too available to students. His actual words were, and I quote, cultivate an air of mystery. I've done the opposite. When I got this job, several people told me that I would have to hide any evidence of my sexuality and avoid talking about race and other topics that might be distasteful to the proverbial Katie from Chicago. I was hoping a few of you would get that. It seems like academics on Twitter have created a cottage industry around 1,000 ways and reasons to say no to students. I've done just the opposite of all of that advice. For me, the transformative thing has been finding ways to say yes to students and developing a pedagogy that casts off any pretense of neutrality and dispassionate objectivity. Now, in the first session or two of all of my classes, I make it clear that I see the classroom as a space to not only explore, but also to actively work against racism, gender oppression, homophobia, and other systems of oppression. My voice might be failing me today because of this cold, but when teaching, I make a full-throated pronouncement that neutrality is not the goal of my course, that it is taught from a distinctly anti-racist, feminist, pro-GLBTQ rights point of view. Of course, it helps that I don't believe any research endeavor conducted by humans is ever truly neutral. For me, what has made the difference is having the guts to relay this to our undergraduate students who might arrive at college thinking that every class will tell every side of every story. I teach a class called Gay and Lesbian America, and thank goodness I am no longer pretending to be neutral on the issue of whether homophobia is wrong and must be obliterated, or whether GLBT people deserve full human rights. Again, for me, it matters that students can bring their own stories into the classroom, and that I do as well. There are lots of valid reasons why faculty members, especially those from marginalized populations, might choose not to reveal too much about themselves. I actually just had a great conversation about that with a beloved colleague at a conference, why it might matter that you don't reveal too much about yourself. And there's certainly times when I choose to hold back. But teaching from a place that recognizes the personal as political has made a really big difference in my life and a really big difference in my career. I think it's important to note, especially for the assistant professors in the room, that my course evaluations actually got better when I started being more honest and transparent about, you laughing? They did, they got better when I started being more honest and transparent about myself as an assistant professor. I told them up front that I was not, when I started teaching here, I would get those dreaded evaluations that say, this guy's biased, he's not neutral. By telling my students up front that I was not neutral, those negative evaluations went away. Don't look for an objective course out of me. Recently, I started asking myself, why not on a somewhat bigger scale? In January, through Notre Dame's International's Insider Project, and some funding from the Dean's Office as well, along with a lot of logistical help from Juan, I was able to take 5 students on a journey through Colombia, exploring that country's recent history from the war on drugs to the peace process. I was inspired by our colleague Jamie Black, who had taken students to Mali the prior year and whom I suspect will be on the stage accepting this award in the near future. The Colombia project yielded some unexpected benefits. Serving in a soup kitchen for Venezuelan migrants and engaging in narco-tourism in Medellin alongside the students helped me to understand the book that I'm writing in an entirely new light. Sure, part of the trip involved me, embarrassingly, screaming into the phone at Airbnb customer service on the streets of Medellin in the rain at midnight. But it also meant forming a temporary but loving family with the students and gave me a chance to model for them that the life of the mind could take them to some unexpected places. Far and away, the aspect of the trip that I am proudest of is the fact that it inspired one of our students, Erla Atanda, who I think is here. Hi, Erla. To return to Cali to conduct interviews with Venezuelan migrant families over the last summer. Erla is an American Studies major with an international development minor and represents to me, that's not Erla necessarily, she represents to me the best of an arts and letters education. She's deeply curious, highly motivated. She's not out to rescue anybody, but she wants to make the world a better place. In seeing the connections she made with several migrants in Cali, and one family in particular, I can tell that she is researching with her whole body. Her research is quite different than my own current work on the cultural history of the war on drugs, but spending time with Erla in Cali last summer and hearing about the ups and downs of her research reminded me why I entered this profession in the first place. None of what I've said today is a prescription. I really think that the best thing about this weird and wonderful profession is that there's a lot of wiggle room to find what works for you in the classroom. We're lucky to work in a college that still believes in the value of a liberal arts education and encourages its faculty members to teach with their whole bodies. If I did have any parting wisdom to share, it would probably be that you get to decide for yourself, if you're a faculty member, what that means to you. But I really do stand before you as someone who has benefited in innumerable ways by asking myself why not and bringing more of my whole self into the classroom with me. Many of you in this room have been my first responders when things haven't worked or I've felt disillusioned with teaching. And it makes it all the sweeter that you're here to celebrate with me on this really special day that means so much to my family and me. When I was growing up in East Chicago, Notre Dame might have only been about 70 miles down the toll road, but culturally and economically, it felt like it was a whole different planet. My first time on campus was my job interview, in fact. I'm proud to have made a home here and to work alongside so many devoted colleagues who strive to make this place more welcoming to students with backgrounds like my own. There's a lot more I could say, and I would, but I know that the famous December faculty meeting open bar is right out those doors. I'm simply going to say again, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for this. It's really good to be home.
One of the fun parts of this meeting every year is finding out what's in the box.
Is it drums?
So I'm gonna yeah. We had a lot of fun with the drums last year. This one's gonna be easier to open. So I will let you open it and then I will describe what it is.
I'm waiting. Whoa. Oh. Oh, wait. Either way.
Okay, so we told you that he's been working on a Pilsen project in Chicago. We found out that his favorite Pilsen artist is Hector Duarte, and so we found one of his works to help celebrate your teaching. This gift was made possible through the generous support of Gil Cardenas, formerly of ILS. It is an original silkscreen print that Mr. Duarte did for an exhibit at the Notre Dame Center for Arts and Culture. Thank you, Jason, for your dedication to your students and to the college. Thanks to all of you for your teaching, research, and service this semester. I invite you to join us and Jason and Juan for the reception. Thank you.